Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. This week, I'm so stoked to have Wil Brooks, aka MC Dälek, on the podcast. I believe this is the first hip-hop artist on As the Story Grows. Dälek just released their new record, Precipice, on Ipecac Records. Wil chats about growing up and getting into hip-hop, signing with Ipecac, and the artistic creativity that drives Dälek. This was a super fun chat, and I loved getting to explore 2 decades worth of music. If you're not a traditional hip-hop fan, I highly recommend giving Dälek some time. The soundscapes and beats that the band has used over their career, and especially on this new record, are unique and interesting, and you could spend months dissecting the instrumentations and sounds on each record. It's a real treat. Speaking of treats, on Wednesday, May 18th, we are doing our first ever Patreon Hangout. Patreon members and I will have some time to chat about music, the podcast, what's coming up, where we've been, where we're going, or whatever they want on the evening of the 18th. A link will be on Patreon later this week. $1 a month will get you into that hangout. Patreon.com/asthestorygrows. I hope you guys enjoy getting to know MC Dälek. I love getting to discover new music and like listening to the new record first and then having 2+ decades worth of music to dive into, which I did this morning on my run, and how great your discography is.
I appreciate that, man. So this is the first record you've heard?
Precipice was the first one. Nice. I heard, and then I was able to go back and pick up Filthy Tongue and Absence, and I put the whole discography on my phone this morning when I went out for my run, and just nice. Was able to enjoy it, and it's great. So I'm a fan. It's awesome.
Welcome aboard. I appreciate that.
Yeah. You're originally from Newark?
Yeah. I'm in Union City. I've been in Union City for the last, almost 15 years now.
That's cool. What was growing up like for you?
I don't know. I was a kid. But my parents are both from Honduras. They immigrated here probably early 70s. I was born in 75. My dad worked as a car messenger for a lot of his working career. I actually ended up doing that once I was of driving age. Just kind of grew up watching my dad really bust his ass, trying to provide for me, my sisters. My mom was working as well. The two of them, that work ethic, really got really got ingrained into my psyche, man. And I always try to tell people it's I'm a musician, but I approach it with that kind of work ethic. You know what I mean? Of working that kind of 9 to 5, man, because it's you have to put everything you have into it. And I'm also, because of that, I'm also very very appreciative that I get to do what I love. You know what I mean? I watched my father work because of his love for his family. It wasn't necessarily that he loved what he did. He just did what he had to provide for us. So I realized how lucky I am to one generation removed of coming into this country, being able to do what I love for a living. You know what I mean? So it's I never lose sight of that,
Yeah.
But overall, growing up, my childhood was good, man. I looking back now, I don't really have complaints, man. We didn't have a lot, but we had enough. You know what I mean? And you don't really realize what you don't have. You just, you exist with what you do have. And my father made sure that, we had no wants or needs, man. Like he took care of shit.
Yep.
And my mom as well, the two of them really. So like I never, like I remember like when I was like young, like we lived like in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I remember like it was my mom and dad and my 2 sisters in one room. It was me, my aunt, and my cousin in another room. But like looking back on it, I'm like, wow, that's wild. You know what I mean? Like how do we do that? But at the time, it just that was just life. You know what I mean? So like it didn't, like it never resonated like, oh man, like we're struggling. It was just like, this is what it is. So grew up, relatively good, like in that sense, man. Just loving family, good people's, always music in the household. My parents are musicians, but they always instilled a love for music. Like my mom was a huge like Beatles and Elvis fan. A lot of like all types of Latin music in the house as well, like salsa. Just my 2 of my cousins were like early into hip hop, so like I grew up being like the little kid, like growing up around them. So like they were DJs, so I would always be around, and that's kind of where like the whole spark for hip hop came from. And then I had another cousin who was into metal, so I also grew up listening to like Black Sabbath and like Slayer and shit like that. So it was kind of a cool mix, man. And like I started DJing probably like at like 13 or 14, so like starting that early. I just, I've always just kind of been into all different types of genres, which is why like when me and Octopus started Dialect, the idea of combining like all these different styles wasn't really that wild to me. It made sense. You know what I mean? Like it was just kind of like, it was like being a DJ, but putting together like this band where we were just grabbing all the pieces that we liked and like making something brand new with it, which to me was hip hop. You know what I mean? Like that's the essence of hip hop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, there's I don't know, there's other shit that went on growing up with, you know what I mean? Like for the most part, like that, that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. You mentioned having all these influences guiding you. Were there like specific groups that you looked up to who were doing something different and combining different genres into hip hop? Or was it just like, this is what we're into and this is what we're trying to create our own lane?
Yeah, I just kind of remember hip hop early on. Like the worst thing you could be in hip hop was a biter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in hip hop, like originality in your own style was like the most respected thing. So that was just kind of ingrained to me early. So it wasn't really necessarily about like being like, this, eccentric group. It was just about finding my own voice and finding my own way of doing it. So this is just kind of like, this evolved naturally. Obviously over years, but growing up, I mean, like I was into, I think like huge influences in hip hop for me were probably like Public Enemy, Boogie Down Productions, KRS One, Eric B and Rakim, Tribe Called Quest, Nas. I mean, like you run down the list, man. Like I grew up immersed in hip hop. And also the early stuff like Treacherous 3 was a huge influence to me, just because my cousins were rocking that all the time. And Melly Mel, Grandmaster Flash, like all of that. So I kind of like, got that early 80s like hip hop as well, you know what I mean? And not, growing up in the 80s also, like Run DMC, you couldn't escape that, you know what I mean? Like that was like our first like superstars in hip hop, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. In hip hop, there seems to be maybe this is just more of an outside perspective. Is like I love hip hop, but I'm not like ingrained and immersed in it the same way I'm like metal. So for me, it's just like, it seems like, yeah, you can listen to Black Alicious and Tribe and also really be into like, Kanye or 2 Chainz or whatever. It's just like, if it's good, it's good. And like, you're not being like, those guys are sellouts who are doing this whack shit versus these guys are real artists. Or is there some of that too? Like,
no, I mean, I think there is some of that in every genre. I don't really subscribe to that. I subscribe more to like what you first said. Like to me, but like even like on a more even macro level, like just music in general, I just see it in terms of good and bad. I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like what's pop music or what's underground or what's like the new hip thing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like to me, it's if I hear something, if I dig it, I dig it. And that's the beauty of music, man. It's so subjective. There's no right or wrong answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I try to tell people, it's like, yo, the people that are into like the straight up, pop 100 stuff or whatever, like, that's fine. Like if that's what moves them, so be it. You know what I mean? That has nothing to do with me being into Faust or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, whatever you like, man. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like it's about finding the stuff that resonates with you. You know what I mean? Regardless of genre.
Who you pray to, my God? The black God. Who you pray to, my God? The brown God. Who you pray to, my God? The white God. Your reaction's kinda odd for a kid who loves the lie. Who you pray to, my God? The black God. Who you pray to, my God? The brown God. Who you pray to, my God? The white God. Your reaction's kinda odd for a kid who loves the lie. With skin like Jesus, sick of bullshit preachers, concerned with the border beaters, don't give a fuck who feeds us. Speak so tedious, if Abraham readers, while they still have the Louimas, slaves since days of Julius Caesar, man's need to dominate.
What originally led you guys to Ipecac Records? Like, that's definitely going this alternative lane for a record label for a hip hop group.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we've always kind of just, obviously, sonically, we've always been left to center. When we started touring, I guess back in like mid '90s, we just personally didn't really have too many inroads into the the hip hop touring circuit at that time. What we did have was my partner Octopus was a recording engineer, and he had recorded a bunch of indie rock bands from New Jersey and all over the U.S. But he had recorded stuff like Ride Coalition, the Van Pelt, Chisel, All Natural Lemonade Flavors, like a bunch of these Gurn Blanston bands. So like originally our first album came out on Gurn Blanston. That was like the first label we were on, but already like that wasn't a hip hop label.
Yeah.
We were just kind of like, to us, it was like the same mentality of like, we played wherever and whenever we could play. It didn't matter to us. I mean, if it was a VFW whole show with like 4 punk bands, so be it. Like we were going in and we were doing our shit, and everything was like, it was like combat, man. We were like, yo, like we're gonna find like the 5 people there that like us, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and recruit them, and like everyone else, fuck it. If you ain't with us, you ain't with us. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So like that was kind of our mentality early on, and Gurn took a liking to us. We ended up putting out our first record, Negro Neca Necros, on Gurn, and like that was like 97, 98 around there, and off of that, we started. I mean, like we were already touring pretty extensively, but off of that, we really kind of started touring like full time, and we went out to Europe with this band, The Lapse, and then came back to the States, did more tours, and like during those tours, like I remember we had gotten a booking agent, and that booking agent, Mike Morey, put us on to. We played some shows with Lovage, which was Mike Patton's project with Dan the Automator. It's more of a hip hop, sort of like hip hop ish kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like I had a singer on it, like really dope shit. So like we were the opening act for that. And I remember like it was probably like the first or second show. We did like maybe like 4 shows with them, 4 or 5 shows. But like the first or second show, Patton was like at the side of the stage watching us while we were playing. And then every night we would just see him there like vibing to what we were doing. And, he introduced himself. We would like hang out and stuff, like talk. And then like the last day of that tour, he was like, yo, like what are y'all doing like in a week? We were like, I don't know. I was like, we're gonna be home. And he was like, you guys want to come out to Europe and be the support act for I think it was I always mess this up, but in my mind I think it was Tomahawk. Okay. It might have been Fantomas, but it was one or the other.
Yeah.
But he invited us out to be like the support act for his band that was about to go to Europe. But it was like literally like 1 week turnaround kind of thing where we had to like organize the whole thing to happen. We were like yeah, absolutely. We jumped at the opportunity. And then I do remember backstage after like the first show, we were in Belgium, and like Pat, we walk off stage, Patton comes running back and he's like, yo, what the fuck is it going to take to get you guys on my label? And I was just like, the funny shit is that like, and I tell, Mike knows the story. I've told it a million times, but my partner Octopus was definitely more into the idea.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yo, this is dope, man." I was just kind of like, I was a little skeptical. I was like, "Eh." I was like, Mike Patton, like the white boy from that video with the fish that's flopping around, that was trying to rap and shit, like back in, because that's all I knew from Faith No More was like that video that was on MTV, like every fucking minute back in the day and shit. So I was kind of like, eh. So I had to get convinced. In retrospect, I'm so thankful, so grateful that Octopus convinced me, because that was like the best decision we ever made in our life. And honestly, like Patton and Ipecac, that's family, man. They really put us on. They really like taught us what it was all about, man. And they've had our back since then. And it's been great, man. It's been wonderful. You know what I mean? Like, since then we've obviously like gone out with more than enough of the label mates that we have. And still be, it's kind of weird being like one of like the elder statesmen now on the label, because it's like, it's like me, Patton, and all his projects, and the Melvins are like, like the original ones left. You know what I mean? Obviously, like, Turner, Aaron Turner and Isis were part of it as well, but they're not, obviously, like, he's doing other stuff now, but it's bugged out being like an elder statesman on the label, and then like still seeing like all the dope bands that they keep signing, man. Because right now I'm like super excited with like the new people they've been signing, like King Garbage and Spotlights, and I mean, there's just like they keep signing quality music, man. So I'm very happy to be part of Ipecac, man. But yeah, like it was as simple as that, man. It was like, honestly, like I feel that the fact that we toured so much is why anything ever happened for us, because it was like basically like playing so much, we just crossed paths with so many people, with so many musicians, and people like Patton, like, liked what he heard, and put his like reputation, what I mean, like on the line basically, and put us out, what I mean. And like, again, like, like they, like Ipecac had, I think they had put out one record with Sensational at that point, I think. So they had like a little bit of hip hop on there, but it wasn't Sensational. No, I'm sorry, I'm thinking a different label. I'm thinking Matador. He had put out the Executioner's joint.
Yeah.
So I mean, like they had like a little bit of, they had dabbled a little bit in hip hop, but it wasn't, like we were like the first like, straight up like out there project that they put out that was hip hop based. So they definitely took a risk on it, but yeah, I appreciate that they did that.
Yeah, and because everything they did was kind of left of like any genre, right? That it made sense that they would have a hip hop group that wasn't just like, what you were hearing on the radio at the time. So
I feel like that's like the thread that kind of like, it kind of like it runs through all the bands. Like there's like this weirdness that that unites all of us, for lack of a better term. But,
yeah. What led you to decide to put the group on hiatus for those like 4 or 5 years in the early 2010s?
Yeah, we I mean, like me and Octopus, again, like, me and Octopus started the band originally, and then like early on, it was me, Octopus, and we had brought in my boy DJ Rec as the live DJ. But the production was primarily myself, Octopus, and then we would have Joshua Booth from Unnatural M-Line Flavors also work with us. We have, we've had like different collaborators throughout the years that would come in and like work with us. But the core of it was always me and Octopus. And then after that, it was me, Doc, and DJ Still. And then it's just been like so many different iterations of the band, but it's always been me and Octopus. So me and him had been doing it for like 15 years at that point. You know what I mean? And like that was basically it, man. It was like it just felt like we both felt like we needed a break. You know what I mean? Like it was just, we had been on the road pretty much nonstop for more than a decade and a half. And the early days took a toll, man. Like we used to sleep on people's floors. There wasn't any hotel rooms, there wasn't any of that. All the travel, or like, all that, man. Like it just, it's tough, man. Like it's, you do it because you love it, and there's definitely so many like, positives of it. But being on the road is not for everyone, and it's also it's rough, man. It's not an easy existence. And at that point, I feel like we both, I remember like I think we played a show in it was in Switzerland, and we were kind of hanging out at the sound check. And at that point it was just me and him in the band, and he was like, I remember him saying like, yeah, I think this is it for me. And I was like, yeah. And I kind of felt it. I was like, I feel it, man. I was like, that's what's up. And it was like, it was that, man. It wasn't. There was no, I know everyone wants like the behind the music like drama and shit, but there wasn't. There was no fight. There was no. This wasn't about arguments. It wasn't about me and him not getting along. It was nothing about that. It was just we had been doing this one thing for 15 years, and it was time to try other things. It was time to take a break. And that was the thing. It's like taking a break is kind of a misnomer because Octopus at that point was living in Berlin, and he had started he had really gotten into like the whole like Berlin electro sound, and he had started a project called MRC Rhythms, and was just more into like that club world, still underground, still dark, but more of like he was more like on that electro tip, and he still is to this day. And then I kind of like went back to my roots and like did this project Iconoclast, which when I started it was really like stripped down like boom bap hip hop that I just wanted to do like a stripped down hip hop record. But the funny thing is like I did it, but it's like still through my fucked up lens, so it isn't quite as like straightforward as I thought it would be. It's still it's just not as noisy as Dialect, I guess. It's like it's like a more straightforward but still kind of askew. But anyway, but I didn't like those 5 years it wasn't me sitting at home doing nothing. I was basically back out on the road like within like a year, I think. Touring with Iconoclast, which is kind of hilarious. I was like, burnt on touring, but at the same time, the funny thing is when I went back out with Iconoclast, it was like starting over. So the touring was even more grueling because it wasn't even at the level that the Dialect touring was at. But I enjoyed the freshness of it, and I also enjoyed like the fact that it was like it was mine, like it was me alone doing it. You know what I mean? Like even though I brought in Motive, DJ Motive as DJ of touring, but the project itself, was written, produced, mixed, everything. You know what I mean? Like by me. So it was kind of like almost like something like I wanted to prove to myself that I could do this like by myself without anyone else, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I did. You know what I mean? And it was a wonderful experience. I also realized that like after doing that for like 5 years, just organically I started playing like a couple Dialect songs as like encores here and there. And then I've started seeing like how much like people still enjoyed hearing that. And then I also like I was just feeling like how much I still enjoyed playing those old songs. And I was like, man, I do miss like just like the noise and the aesthetic of Dialect, and just kind of had that feeling like I wanted to do it again. Approached Octopus at first about doing it again, but he, like I said, he had really immersed himself in the new world that he was trying to conquer. Yeah. And like his heart was in it, and I felt it. You know what I mean? Like me and him were hanging out at I think it was a Bug show, Kevin Martin show, and I told him my idea that I wanted to start up the group again. And I could see that he wasn't really big on the idea, but he was like, he could see that I was big on it. So he was like, if you want to do this, you definitely do it. He was like, but I'm not really into it. And I completely understood that. So at that point, I recruited Mike Manteca, who had he had been around since the Absence days. No shit, like since the Filthy Tongue days. Uh-huh. And he had been everything from like he had opened up for us with his own project called the Destructive Swarmbots. We had recruited him to play guitar for us live. So he's like been around Dialect and been part of Dialect for forever. So to me, it just made sense to bring him in because he already knew what the group was about. He already knew us. Like me and him, we were already like family at that point. That was my brother. So I was like, yo, like who better but to bring someone in that like already knows what this path is. So it was cool, what I mean, like to restart. And I think like the first thing we did was I think the first song we released was Mass Laughter. And that was the thing. It's like, I kind of let it be known to Octopus, like, yo, I was like, listen, I was like, if I'm doing this again, I just wanted him to know that, I was like, I'm not coming with no bullshit. And I'm not gonna do anything that's gonna tarnish what we built. You know what I mean? So I was like, I always have an eye for that, like where I'm like, I'm not releasing shit unless it's like up to par, man. You know what I mean? Because it's like all I've ever wanted is just like whatever the fuck I work on musically, I don't ever want to be embarrassed by it later. You know what I mean? So I kind of keep that in mind. So like regardless of like what the paycheck is, or regardless of whatever it is, like a name that I'm working with, any of that, like I don't give a shit about any of that. All I care about is the final product and how it sounds and like what the music sounds like.
Yeah.
If I'm proud of it, I'll release it. So, that's honestly, that's the only reason why, I'm still here releasing records, is because the shit that I'm releasing, I'm still feeling, and it's still at that level, man. So like, I wouldn't be putting shit out if it was subpar. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. There's never been a moment where you're just like, fuck it, here's a trap song for radio. So like, we can pat our pockets a little bit or something, right? Like,
nah, man. Like, I mean, like I listen, I went into this early on knowing exactly what Dälek was, man. Like when we started this group, I knew that it wasn't mainstream. I knew that it wasn't pop music. I knew it wasn't. It's not for everyone. I know that. You know what I mean? But that's that's part of the game, man. It's like you kind of have to know what you have to know what you're releasing. You have to know what you are, and beyond that, like I was trying to tell someone had asked me, like, if I ever had any advice for like younger musicians, and I always find that's a tough question. Just because the world changes so much and the music world has changed so much, it's really hard for me to tell someone how to navigate a world that I barely know how to navigate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the only like advice I really could give people is just like, I think the most important thing is to like you yourself need to define what success is and what it means to you, and just hold true to that. You know what I mean? Like, don't give a fuck like what anyone else says about you or what anyone else says about your music. If you're achieving what you define as success, then you're good. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like album sales. It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be fame. It doesn't have to be none of that. It has to be whatever you dictate it is. You know what I mean?
It's never quite right, is it? Endless records delivered by hair triggers. Prepared figures in the hollow point speech. Won't follow, don't preach. Wrote each syllable to decipher beneath. Agreed aesthetic is embedded, so I shatter that. Impaired vision like the world got cataracts. Ignore the text and all fronts, now we push it back. A line force to outflank how they counteract. Agreed aesthetic is embedded, so I shatter that. Impaired vision like the world got cataracts. Ignore the text and all fronts, now we push it back.
If Ipecac is a weird label for you guys to be on, or a label that makes sense, but it's not a mainstream hip hop record, putting out a record on Profound Lore, which is a metal label, is really fucking wild. Like,
well, I figured even like well, I mean, again, like they contacted us, but at that point, I just figured, well, yeah, I mean, like at this point, we can't put out a record on a regular like hip hop label.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if we put out a record on a regular hip hop label, that would be even weirder at this point. All right, so putting it out on an extreme metal label makes more sense in my mind, because at least it's so out there that people are like, why the fuck is this like weirdo hip hop group on a metal label? And I think that's the beauty of it, man. It's like you always want to keep people on their toes, man. And I like being where people don't expect me to be. And I was, I enjoy ruffling some feathers, man. So what's more fun than pissing off some metalheads because there's a hip hop group on their favorite label?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You said they contacted you?
Yeah. They are. I guess, they had been fans of our music. And again, it just happened to coincide. It worked out, man, because it was basically, that was the other thing that was weird. Like when we put that record out, everyone was like, oh, what happened with Ipecac? Oh my God, what happened? And again, I wish there was a, behind the music story, but there really isn't. They just had, like, by the time we decided to come back with this first album, with the new album after the hiatus, Ipecac's release schedule was just really fucking thick at that point. So it would have taken us, like, we would have had to like basically wait another year to put the record out. You know what I mean? And at that point, I really wasn't willing to wait. I was itching to get back out with the new Dälek stuff. So I told them, I was like, listen, we have like this offer from this label, Profound Lore, and Greg and them at Ipecac were like, yeah, they're like, go ahead and do that. Because if they can get it out now, do that. And he's like, we'll put the next one out. Like, it's like Ipecac is home, man. Like, there's no leaving Ipecac. It's more like Ipecac is more like, it's like the mob, man. Like once you're in, like, that's it. You can't get out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But Profound Lore contacted us, and we wanted to get the record out. They were down to put it out. It made sense at the moment, and it worked out, man. They treated us really well. And it was great just getting back out there with that album, man. Like Asphalt for Eden was definitely you know, it's a special record for me just because it is like that first one after being gone for like 5 years. So, you know, there was there was a lot riding on it in my mind. You know what I mean? And so we were trying to, you know, to put out something like to kind of show motherfuckers that we hadn't gone nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That we were here. So yeah, it was dope, man. Those were definitely good times.
How did COVID affect the group and especially the process for this record, Precipice?
Yeah, it was tough, man. I mean, obviously, like it's not a silver lining, but the only sort of like okay thing was the fact that we had planned not to tour in 2020 regardless, because we were planning on working on this album. So luckily we didn't have any tour dates that got canceled that year, but we weren't expecting to be home for like 2+ years either. You know what I mean? Without any prospects of shows. And also, you know, we weren't even able to work on the record because basically once COVID hit around here, you know, like my studio was shut down. So like we weren't even really able to like get in here to work on shit. So it, you know, it put a halt to everything. We had started working on Precipice. It's kind of hard to say exactly when, because like the way we work is basically I'm just constantly working on song ideas, and just kind of putting them into different folders. And then when it comes time to work on an album, me and my tech will get together, kind of like, you know, pick songs that kind of like vibe together, and then, you know, put those, you know, narrow it down to like, I think we started like with 50, then narrowed it down to like 20 something. Then from there had it down to like 17. And those 17 we started working on in earnest. And they were all like, you know, all different stages. Like, you know, some of them were more fleshed out than others. Some were more full songs. Some were just kind of just concepts. But, you know, that was the idea for the album. We had brought in my boy, Joshua Booth, was doing guitar overdubs. Me and him were working on that early stuff. And then everything kind of came to a standstill. In the, you know, during that time that everything got shut down, I worked on the meditation series. A lot of that I was doing from my home. I basically just grabbed like a couple pieces of gear from my studio, and I, you know, had like a little like makeshift like home setup in my office that I was working on. Mm-hmm. But after that whole experience, and once like, you know, the studio reopened after releasing like 7 volumes of the meditation series, like all of that kind of like played an influence on, you know, when we came back and I started listening to what we had down that was going to be Precipice, it just didn't sound right to me anymore. And I think also just because of everything we had been through, you know, just, you know, as a society and personally, you know, everything from like the pandemic to the police shootings to, you know, just everything that we have been through. You know what I mean? Like listening back to what was going to be the album, I remember telling Manteca, I was like, yo, it was like, this shit it's not angry enough. It's not sad enough. It's not, you know what I mean? It's just not right. It's just not enough. Like it needs to be something else. And we basically, not that we've restarted, but we tore a lot of stuff down to be built back up again. Some songs got omitted completely. Some new songs got put into the album that were created during the pandemic that kind of captured what the vibe really was. I know like 2 of the joints that Manteca brought himself that ended up becoming Lest We Forget and Devotion. Those 2 were pretty much fully formed like on his own. I think I added like maybe like a bass line to each and maybe like a piano or a synth or something. And then I added lyrics to Devotion. But like when he played me Lest We Forget, I was like, yeah, I was like, this is what I'm talking about. I was like, that as soon as I heard it, I was like, yo, that's the opener to the album. So that was kind of like what set the tone for what the record was going to be. And yeah, like it just, brought Josh back in. We did, more overdubs, arrangements, lyrics, and everything just fell into place, man. I mean, like, it's hard work. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like we were there for more than a minute, man. But but at that, once we kind of started on that trajectory, everything kind of made sense, and we kind of knew what we had to do. And yeah, I'm more than ecstatic with how the record came out, man, and our final product. The way the sonics, the lyrics, the just the vibe of like the track listing, like the way one song plays into the other, the whole, the record as a whole, just really, I'm as happy as I can be with it, because I know, like, in about a month I'm gonna hate it, but right now I'm good with it.
That's cool. Yeah, the record feels very reflective in moments, like you mentioned, lest we forget Devotion, even Heretics Inheritance. Like, they have this ambient and space and reflectiveness and like meditative vibe to them. Like, Insight and Boycott,
Decimation,
like Decimation, like, are all like very hard hitting. Like, you feel the like anger and like righteous injustice on this album.
Yeah. I there is like those two, like vibes, I guess, for lack of a better term. But yeah, like I've always tried to make my lyrics. I've always tried to make them not ambiguous, but like tried to make them like where they can have multiple meanings, but and like to give people leeway to let them like find their own meaning in what I'm saying. And there is definitely a lot of that on this album, but I feel like there's definitely some joints like Boycott where I want you to specifically hear what I'm saying. You know what I mean? There's no other way to interpret like what I'm saying, and that's definitely, that's by design on this album. There's some things I need to get off my chest, man. Some things that need to be said, and they were definitely said, and I wanted to say them in the least amount of words, but in the most powerful words that I could. That I could say at that point. And I hope I accomplished that. But yeah, I think Decimation and Boycott might be like two of my favorite joints on there, just like because of the way they feel.
Yeah. Is that something you feel like has come with age with your lyrics, or is it just like the nature of, we had 2 years at home and all this shit over the last 5 years has risen to the surface, and we're just like, we're fucking tired of it, right?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both, man. Like like I was saying, like in a month I'm gonna hate this album. The reason I say that is because I feel like that about all my records. Not that I hate my records, but just like like I said earlier, like I always want to make sure that I'm not embarrassed by anything, and I'm not. I feel like all my records capture who I am at the moments that the records were created. The thing is that as a human, like, you change, man, and you grow. And when I listen back to my early records, I'm not that person anymore. You know what I mean? Like that was like a 20-something-year-old version of me. Yeah. I mean, the core tenets, I'd like to believe I've kind of, maintained some sort of semblance of like who I've always been, but you grow and you change and you experience shit. And I do feel that, like, these lyrics are written by a 46-year-old man who's been through some shit. You know what I mean? So I would hope that they hit different, and I would hope that they resonate different. You know what I mean? Like, if they didn't, then I haven't really grown much as a person, and that would be a damn shame. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but like to what you were saying, I think it has to do with what we've all been through collectively. Now, doesn't really have anything to do with age, but it's just the experiences that I've had in the last couple of years. Yeah, they they definitely sparked a lot of what you heard on that album. I also feel that this is also a craft that I've been working at for 20 plus years. So again, like, I would hope that my lyrics have gotten better, my wordplay have gotten better. My understanding of language and my vocabulary is hopefully grown. So there's all those factors.
obscured origins, original sin brought back to the floor again. Tried and hung like dumb from day one. You obsessed where my peoples come from. Built cultures and pyramids, kid. Y'all wasting millennia, fearing this shit. Are you hearing this shit? Really feeling this shit?
I know everyone loves streaming, but the best way to support an artist is to buy like physical copies, even if you don't play them, like hang them up on your wall. You know what I mean? And get the download code and then put that shit on your phone. But but yeah, I mean, like, yo, man, like, and if you know, we'll be playing shows, we'll be out on the road, man. I think if this comes out next week, then I could say there's definitely going to be a New York and a Boston show coming up in July, which we're announcing that this Friday, so that'll be around next week. So yeah, so just, I mean, like, you could just go to deadverse.com, check out the tour dates and all the information for all the other shit coming up. But yeah, you know, we already started working on the next record, believe it or not. So yeah, we're not done by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, keep an eye out. Keep an eye out.
Nice, Brad. Was there ever any conversation about like putting this record out on cassette with like the rise of cassettes again? Like, it feels like the type of music that would go well on cassette tape.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I've actually so my own label, Deadverse Recordings, like we primarily only put out cassettes, and we've been doing that for a while. Now it seems like we're like a chic label because everyone is doing that. But right. we were actually putting out a cassette just because like I just thought it was kind of cool, just because I personally just really like cassettes, so we've been doing that for the last few years. Nice. But yeah, I mean, like I might end up like putting it out on cassette on my own label. Then you know, it's weird. I actually got approached by like some random cassette label about me putting out like the Dälek stuff on their label, and I was like, yo, like if you're really a fan as you said you were, you know that I have my own cassette label, so why would I put it out on yours? It doesn't really make much sense. But anyway, but yeah, I think like that's something that we're definitely gonna come around to, maybe like put out like a special, like, you know, box set kind of thing or something. We'll figure something out. But yeah, I think it'll sound really good on cassette. You know what I mean? Like the music definitely lends itself to it. Yeah.
We at the precipice, the specialist, situation tenuous, bad mad, powerless, the math, pure elements, precipice, stressing this, situation tenuous, bad mad, powerless, the math, pure elements. We at the precipice, the specialist, situation tenuous, bad mad, powerless, the math, pure elements, precipice, stressing this, situation tenuous, bad mad, powerless, the math, pure elements.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.